Well, first, welcome to Oshkosh.
Thank you.
It's quite an event. We're all friends here, so tell us your feelings of user fees and if you've done any studies about how, if they're implemented, that will impact GA activity.
You know, the whole question of user fees is something that is a long-standing discussion that we always seem to have in the aviation industry. As you know, the President put forward a proposal earlier this year that really looked at the question of the possibility of a segment fee. It's something that we've talked about before. I think the big thing, though, the bigger picture question and the thing that the President is really trying to focus on is the long-term financial sustainability of the aviation system. The FAA is funded through a combination of fees, ticket taxes, and fuel taxes and so forth, and then general fund support. We all know that as a government, we are dealing with some pretty significant fiscal challenges. And so I think the conversation that the President was really trying to start is a conversation about how can we reduce the reliance on the general fund. You know, obviously, we've heard a lot from the general aviation community. We've heard a lot from the aviation community generally, and that's a conversation that we're going to continue to have. I think that as it relates to the current budget year that we're looking at, there hasn't been a whole lot of support from either the Senate and the House for this proposal. But I think the long-term question is something that we need to continue to focus on. We're doing everything that we can to operate as efficiently as possible, but this longer-term financing question is something that's going to be with us for a while, and we need to work together to figure that out.
First of all, I'm Jim Campbell with the Aero-News Network. Your predecessor some time ago promised an FAA that would emphasize safety over bureaucracy. And yet in the last year we've had to do stories about an airman out in California conducting illegal commercial operations, one of which resulted in the death of 2 people several weeks ago that Van Nuys knows all about. And on top of it, there's YouTube videos from here to Mars on that. You have airmen that are being turned in on the hotline anonymously without any substantiation whatsoever that are now going through absolute and utter hell to prove that, in fact, they don't have a kidney stone or they don't have this or don't have that. We have a Part 145 rewrite that could shut down so many of the repair stations out there, it's not even funny. We have pilots afraid to give PIREPs, especially in icing scenarios, because some of that information is now being used to go against them for violations. With that prefaced, how can we build the FAA that emphasizes safety over bureaucracy by getting rid of those kinds of problems and others like it? Because we're not going to survive this the way this is going.
You know, the thing is, ultimately, it's got to be about communication. And you're bringing it up here. This is something that we talk about a lot in our team. You know, I joined the agency a couple of years ago as deputy, and since I became administrator, acting administrator, it's still an act, but one of the things that we've really stressed is that this is a shared responsibility that we have as an industry. We're a big organization. We're 48,000 people. And those are organizations that are difficult to implement the kind of culture that and consistency across the whole board. And I understand that. You know, in the short time that I've been there, I've visited tons of facilities just to sit down and talk with the employees and to really talk about the great work that they do, but also to make sure that everyone understands that it's important that we approach our responsibility as a shared relationship that we have. We all care about one thing, and that's maintaining safety. And we really need to be asking ourselves the question, is what I'm doing going to advance the cause of safety? Sure, there are things that are going to pop up, but I'm optimistic that as we continue to work these issues and with the high level of attention that we're providing, you know, across the whole agency, that we will be successful.
Avidyne is the brand of choice for pilots who want innovative, easy-to-use avionics, and the new IFD 540 and 440 FMS GPS navcoms set a new standard for ease of use and simplicity. As plug-and-play replacements for legacy 530 and 430 series navigators, the hybrid touch user interface of the IFD 540 and IFD 440 makes it much easier to access the information you want while reducing head-down time, and making flying more enjoyable. Now you have a choice, and the choice is easy. Avidyne.
I'm currently a first officer for a regional airline whose name I won't say. I have about 750 hours. I'm CFI, an MEI, Never had a training failure. I consider myself to be a good pilot. As a result, though, of the FAA's new 1,500-hour rule, come June, I will be terminated from my job because I will no longer meet the aeronautical experience requirements. I sit on reserve. I only get to fly about 30 hours a month. I'm going to press you for an answer here if you don't mind. I have a lot of friends of mine, they have families, and we're all about to be out of our jobs here because I can't fly anymore unless I go out and buy a plane or rent a plane. Will you extend this deadline? Or will you grandfather me in? I'm a good pilot. I'm a perfectly qualified pilot. There's no reason why I should lose my job come August 2013.
Yeah, we can, in August 2013, let me talk about what exactly the law provides and then the rule that we have underway to address that. If we do nothing, the law that was passed by Congress allows for a 1,500-hour minimum requirement to kick in. That's what happens unless the FAA does something different. The rule that we have proposed is relieving of the legal framework. It allows credit for educational institutions, for military, and other activities that can count against achieving that overall requirement for hours. You know, we've received a lot of comments on the rule of how we could better address this concern, and we're hearing it a lot. The comment period is closed. We got a lot of comments on it. We have to finalize a final rule and a final way forward. But the point I want to make is if we do nothing, if we don't finalize the rule, then the law that was passed by Congress would set the limit at 1,500. What we're trying to do is look at more flexibility.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Kate Greenfield, and I'm a part-time flight instructor. And I get a number of students that come to me that want to fly in technically advanced aircraft, or they want to transition to TAA. And I think the FAA does a wonderful job with all the educational materials and the resources. However, the FAA written exams don't necessarily reflect that. So my question to you is, when do you expect to update the FAA test questions so that us teachers can help our students focus on today's technology as opposed to NDBs and E6Bs and, you know, questions from decades ago?
Yeah. John, you want to take that?
Thanks for the softball, appreciate it, because we just concluded an ARC to address that very fact. And we know that these tests have become outdated, have not been kept up, and actually sometimes I think are counterproductive to bringing on better pilots and really testing their capabilities in new technologies and in airmanship, that magic word I haven't seen a lot. And so we've just concluded an ARC, and we've had some really good people who are innovators and thinking about moving that bar and talking to the best folks we know about in the public to infuse a more common sense and a more in-tune testing strategy and tests that will be out there. So we're going to be integrating that, and we don't have to do rulemaking for that as well, so that won't hold that up. And so you'll be seeing new testing and new methodologies of testing coming out this year.
Welcome to the Aero-News Network, the aviation world's most comprehensive news and information resource. Real-time 24/7 online audio and video programming, where aviation has been getting updated for over a decade. Distributing over 11,000 stories, features, audio, and video programs every year. Only ANN covers aviation and aerospace with this much depth, insight, and expertise. Check us out on the web at aero-news.net.
I know FAA has started to authorize and permit UAV flights in various areas. As the military draws down and UAV technology becomes smaller and more prevalent with our local law enforcement areas around the country, are you going to be able to monitor that and keep UAVs where they belong?
You know, this whole question of unmanned aircraft is, when we passed FAA authorization earlier this year, you know, the President signed it in February. If you just look at the mail I received and the news articles that were written about FAA reauthorization, the whole question of unmanned aircraft was the single biggest issue. There are two sets of issues that float around out there, and then a third that I don't think is getting quite as much attention as it should, and I'm going to ask for your help in that. The two issues that people are talking about are you have the proponents, the private proponents of unmanned aircraft that are basically saying, the FAA can't do this fast enough. We've got to, free them from the restrictions to operate in the national airspace. They're just like any other aircraft. And FAA, you've got to move more quickly on integrating unmanned aircraft in the national airspace system. That's one set of proponents. You have another set of proponents that are absolutely freaked out about privacy. What are these things going to be used for? And is somebody going to be looking at me from above? The thing that's not being talked about as much is the thing that we care the most about, and that is what are the operating characteristics of these, and that if they are to be integrated in the national airspace system, how can we do that as safely as possible? The basic thing that we have to focus on is we are not going to compromise on the safety of the NAS. It's a different kind of aircraft, it's a different sort of technological evolution, but it raises a whole set of different questions that we haven't had to deal with before. What is the appropriate level of operator training? How do you deal with questions of something called latency, connection between the ground station and the aircraft itself? What happens with loss of link? What are the rules of engagement? In a world that has developed around a concept of sense and avoid, when you don't have eyes in the cockpit, it makes for a very different operating situation. And we have to be very careful about how we address those questions. Like I said, we're not going to compromise on safety. We have to be smart about how we address all of these questions.